just for that. Okay. But anyways, before before get into the UFO crash at Area 51, there's other instances. There's a lot of stuff that has been happening around the cabin and other places, and that's because we also have these objects. We have psionics, people using psychic abilities and stuff. If there's brought the audio, please tell me. Because last time, for some odd reason on YouTube stuff, things were not working. They had double audio. And something I got likes about that. And some people like that when things were, there's no screen or anything. You have to just do stuff, where people can't see me or anything. I don't know. But just have the audio. But anyways, it's really pissed me off how it's gone. Like I said in my last stream, where I've been having a lot of my own UFO experiences, and sometimes they come down and they see us visit me, or I see them a lot more where I am. Videos and stuff, I got videos and everything. She's like what's down here, but that's just the way it is. Let's see what I'm gonna do. But like I said in the last stream, I do not want, I hate the government. I think they're the enemy. The government is the enemy. They're keeping stuff a secret and everything. And I'm afraid to, film some stuff. I do have some stuff on film. I have pictures. I've shown it to other objects coming down from the sky. Objects being running away from what feels our own forces, chasing them off, right at. And like I said, the last live stream is that they're out here tonight. Some of them are out here tonight. They're hiding a bit as well. But you know that they're there. You know that these non-human intelligences are there outside, and that I see them a lot more. And it's most people think to see these UFOs, NHI, and stuff in action and everything. And sometimes I've talked to some people about getting people out there in the desert, people that, maybe don't trust or whatever, and document some of it, because I have a lot of UFO experiences, and it seems like I attract a lot of them, or they're attracted to me or something. Different shapes, sizes, colors, stuff like that. It's just, I want people to know the truth. And we all have these psychic telepathic abilities, and the government wants to hide the truth from us. They do not want other people to know the truth. They don't want you to know the truth. They want, to weaponize bring these craft down. And if I can communicate with these craft, which I can, with now these abilities, they can do it. They can do it as well. And they are, I think our government is a global thing. It's not just the U.S. government. It's that they want to keep us corralled. They want to keep us thumbed down. The government does. And they don't want people to have this freedom of thought and be able to monitor themselves psychically, remote view, and stuff like that. They want to keep us. They want to keep us really on these phones where they can surveil us, track us, and see everything that we do. They do not want us to, be able to communicate cybercode and stuff like that. To communicate with otherworldly intelligences. We have psychopaths that are really criminals for this government. They're making money off of this magic technology of UFOs. It pisses me off really, really bad. Where they're keeping this stuff secret here. I have a lot more experiences with UFOs and other things. More just UFOs, all kinds of paranormal stuff. This is from Nevada here. This is 8 News Las Vegas and OG himself. Let's get to this.
Telling you for several weeks now about a mysterious object of unknown origin that fell from the sky and crashed just near Area 51. And tonight, the public is still in the dark.
So that crash was quickly covered up, both literally and figuratively. 8 News Now Chief Investigator George Knapp thinks the official story, as told by the military, is false.
And we are lucky because George joins us here in the studio with more on what he's now dug up. George.
Well, how quickly might the government respond to a crash of an unknown object? What happened back on September 23rd on public land outside the boundary of Area 51 is a textbook example of how crash retrievals work. And to no one's surprise, pretty much everything told to the public since then is pure fiction.
You can see this in F-18.
Scanners and computers inside this room listen to and record radio traffic.
Public that we have access to this. Because he can have the FBI come at his door, knock it down, he can do the same with me as well. But this is something that we should not let out to the public. Because he's a threat to them, keeping this stuff a secret and everything else. It's surprising that they don't have anything encrypted. All the police comms have this by now. It's like, this is, I think it's very stupid that they're televising this and having it.
Inside Area 51 round the clock. On the morning of September 23rd, York Arnu heard some astonishing news.
Had my cup of coffee and I'm listening to Area 51 security, and all of a sudden they get very serious. Locked down the base.
Arnu learned there'd been a large but totally secret air operation in the middle of the night and that something had gone wrong.
So we just had an asset go down. We had an asset go down. This is not Creech security, this is Area 51 security. And they had an asset go down. And then the next thing.
Yeah, clear. Also shown behind is the UAV, unmanned aircraft with ordnance.
He picked up details about strict security measures which were implemented almost immediately. Not only was Area 51 itself locked down, but within a very short time, so too was a large swath of the Tikaboo Valley. it became clear that some kind of craft had crashed miles outside of Area 51's boundaries on public land adjacent to Highway 375, also known as the ET Highway. Arnu jumped in his truck and headed south from his home in Rachel. But while driving on what's known as Mailbox Road, he ran into an armed patrol.
They had the gun in front of them, not pointed at me, but very visibly in front of them. And it was clear they meant business.
He backtracked and headed south on the ET Highway to Groom Lake Road, the main entrance to the base. It too was blocked off by sheriff's deputies and military security. A military helicopter with an attached basket was sitting there, presumably ready to haul out wreckage of something. A pair of porta potties suggested the team planned to be there for a while.
Almost the entire Tikaboo Valley was shut down.
At the Little Ailey Inn in Rachel, employees were in the dark about a crash, but saw the beefed-up security at closed-off roads and knew something big was unfolding. Crashes are not an everyday occurrence out here, but locals have seen plenty of them over the decades.
If this thing would have crashed anywhere in restricted airspace, in restricted area, we would have never known about it.
After being turned away from the presumed crash site, Arnu and the aerospace sleuths on his website, dreamlandresort.com, began gathering and sharing bits and pieces of information. The FAA had ordered the closure of airspace over a particular spot in the valley. That was a big clue. Then 4 days after the
People are accusing that they should be executed for keeping stuff a secret. ETs and stuff like that. I don't care what people think I do. This has nothing to do with national security. They're keeping stuff a secret about how, I mean, a lot of my people have been killed that try to get this stuff out. People have been murdered, killed over this and everything. And one of the biggest reasons why they don't declassify UFOs is because of all the criminal activity that's associated with keeping it a secret, you know. It pisses me off. You know, you got these people, you know, human trafficking as well, getting people from this country, other countries, getting assets, people's psychotics, abilities to down these craft, and for us to use them, weaponize them, and, you know, use this magic, you know, technology and stuff like that. It pisses me off. We have criminals running this, you know, military or contractors, same thing. So we got thugs, these thugs out, criminals in the desert, you know, keeping stuff secret. I mean, if it is a UAV, it's like, if it's UAV, they're not going to shut down that much airspace. Not if it's UAV, they're going to shut all that down. It's nothing more than UAV. It's more than that.
Crash, the security teams vanished. Arnu went back out for a look. The Air Force had used heavy equipment to plow a dirt road across a section of desert. Arnu followed it and found what he thought was the crash site, then shared it online. That's when things got strange, even by Area 51 standards. A second wave of cleanup crews descended on the site, presumably to pick up any remaining debris, but they also used graders to cover the entire area with a thick layer of dirt, literally a cover-up. Creech Air Force Base, which is home to a fleet of Reaper drones and other UAVs, issued a statement explaining that the, quote, unmanned aircraft was one of theirs. The same statement claimed someone had been tampering with the crash site and had scattered assorted pieces from other aircraft, along with an inert training bomb. The Air Force said the FBI...
outside the boundaries of the base. So this is, you know, we have stupid cops, you know, and stupid, you know, contractors that work at these bases as well, covering it up and everything like that. And I think these people are covered up to be executed for this stuff. I do. It's ridiculous. And all the criminal acts that are associated with
was investigating this alleged tampering at the site. Arnu was amused but not convinced.
The only thing they could get that person for is littering on public land.
That's the story, is it came from Creech and now the FBI is investigating. You think that's bogus?
That's absolutely bogus. I think that was designed to make people not go there.
Arnu drove back out and realized the site he first videotaped was a staging area, not the crash site. 200
They have medicine pointed out people ready to use all people outside the base, and stuff like that. And that's complete bullshit.
yards away, the telltale burn marks on Joshua trees indicated this was where the object slammed into the earth. Both he and another aerospace explorer found pieces of who knows what, debris that came from something other than a drone, seemingly planted to confuse anyone who came looking. But they also found pieces under the dirt that are likely the real thing.
I'm pretty sure that this piece came off the actual aircraft.
Arnu, who was at the site of a genuine Reaper crash years earlier, says there's no way the Air Force could ever recover every piece of a crashed aircraft, so they added some dirt and sprinkled in some misdirection instead.
If I were them, I would probably do just that.
Is there a good guess about what crashed? On the Dreamland Resort website, members, including former military and
Let me tell you, if it is one of our assets, like say one of these stealth fighters, I know from my dad working on F-117 and other secret stuff, they do close down a good part of airspace. That was big. And I was thinking, holy shit, this is pissing me off. I'm such a stupid thing. They do. I remember when there was an F-117 crash in the 90s, early 90s. And the news, Channel 4 News said alluded that could be a stealth thing. And they would allow the news to go to certain places and stuff, and they closed off the airspace. And those parts, I don't know, doesn't look like any giant technology or whatever, but of course they're going to put in false parts as well. Make people think it's a total different thing. I wonder if it could be, it definitely could definitely be a stealth as well. And they would have military assets and stuff like that. And so I gotta put that in there. But I'm trying to know if this UFO stuff, there's no reason. National security is not a reason for keeping it secret. Other countries have the same stuff that we do. They don't, we have, and everything else, and everything. They have satellites and stuff like that. But if it's a stealth craft, that craft, one of our stealth craft, and they're going to have machine guns out there and all this other stuff, and they're going to have heavy vehicles. They said UAV drone. It also, I gotta say, it could be, a secret stealth type of drone. As well, it doesn't have to be UFO or anything. Again, anybody that listens to that got like extreme views and stuff like that. But that's because my experiences and I have a lot of hate for the government and everything because people have died, trying to out the secret stuff.
retired defense contractors chimed in. The leading theory is that the drone was one of the latest generation of AI-controlled craft that accompany advanced fighter planes and can act independently to get the job done.
The next generation air dominance project is the big thing at Area 51. So the pilot flies along and says, hey, there's a target on the ground, drone 1, go check it out, and if it's a bad guy, take care of it. and drone one goes and does the rest.
If the military wants to keep a secret about strange things that fall out of the sky, they have many tools at their disposal. Lock down the base, seal off the public land, put out a cover story, sprinkle some disinformation over the whole thing. Arnu says the middle-of-night operation that ended with the crash is one of the biggest he's ever heard of, nicknamed Black Flag. He has a good idea which hangar at the Area 51 base houses the unknown drones, but is not willing to say more. It is, after all, almost 3 years to the day since FBI agents kicked in the door of his home and carted away his computers and cameras. No charges have ever been filed. Back to you.
And George, what I really like to say is there's so much more behind a press release, right? That press release that came in, the first one that we talked about here, said it was an incident. Didn't even say it was a crash. Didn't even say what it was. So there, really shows you how investigative reporting can go a long way.
Like X-Files right in our own backyard.
And George wants to take Denise and I out there on a bus tour, so we are thinking about it.
Sign us up.
Hey, if you missed any of that report, don't forget you can always watch all of our stories on our.
This is, we're going to talk about, Trump and AI and stuff that goes together. I've talked about AI before, about how it is a threat, to human jobs and stuff like that. And, how Social Security raised the age of Social Security. People don't hire people after a certain age, and usually they're 40s. And with the AI taking over all the jobs, I believe that more people are going to be on the government type of check system. And, we have hundreds of thousands of jobs that are being lost due to AI and stuff. And AI is a big threat to humanity. It is. Trump putting in, and I hate both sides. It's not just Trump, I hate both sides. But put $1 trillion into a mega center, over $1 trillion into databases for AI and stuff like that to take over things. And, trillions of dollars into military stuff. Where Trump is going to declassify UFOs. Middle rights have a big thing to do with powering UFOs and stuff like that and everything.
Reached the security of one of. There's a location in the Mojave Desert called Area 2 that's also known as the Nevada National Security Site. And the story we're bringing you today about what's been happening there is quite extraordinary. It's based in an area called Yucca Flat. It's very close, very, very close, just 18 miles from the super secret and very mysterious test facility known as Area 51. Now, back in the days when the United States began open air.
Now, after this legal out, news is from the news station. This is off Zoltar. As you get pissed when you use stupid UAPs, that's retards. What it is that. I hate that. We lost, us OGs lost 5 UFOs, but anyways, he's a sexy beast still, and everything. So, these things shout out. This is for fair use commentary, life experiences and stuff. Just gratuitous stuff.
nuclear weapons testing from the early 50s through to 1963, it used to be a thing to watch for the flash of the nuclear blasts from the top of the highest buildings in Las Vegas. It's amazing to think these days that the Vegas Chamber of Commerce promoted atomic tourism by distributing calendars and test bomb schedules with maps of the prime viewing spots. Area 2 was the location for 144 nuclear bomb tests, comprising 163 detonations. It's also a special nuclear materials storage area, where bomb components are protected by highly trained nuclear security teams, including today's witness. Now, there's been no full-scale nuclear weapons testing, explosive testing at the Nevada test site since 1992, since the US implemented a voluntary moratorium. But there are still subcritical nuclear experiments happening as part of the so-called Nuclear Weapons Stockpile Stewardship Program to ensure the safety and reliability of the US nuclear weapons stockpile, and that doesn't breach the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. There was, in fact, an experiment that was scheduled for April this year in a laboratory that sounds like something out of science fiction. It's 1,000 feet underground at this site, and it's where they do their critical bomb testing. So this is, by necessity, a highly secure area. And it's my pleasure today to welcome a gentleman by the name of Joshua Shelton, who was entrusted during his military service to provide security at Area 2 in the early 2000s. Now, we've talked before on Reality Check about the obvious nexus between UAPs, paranormal phenomenon, and nuclear weapons and facilities. And what Joshua is going to reveal today is quite extraordinary. It's a story that's never been told before. He was present at Area 2 during an alarming series of paranormal UAP events there. I've spoken to him and a range of witnesses, some of whom aren't yet willing to go on the record. But like Joshua's actually testified already to the FBI, and we're indebted to Americans for Safe Aerospace, Ryan Graves, for putting us in touch with Joshua. What has he seen? What have these witnesses seen? There's things like UAP craft incursions of the Area 2 facility, orbs, black triangles, disc craft overflights, animal mutilations, multiple so-called shadow beings inside the facility that evaded capture. Another one they call the White Lady, who passed through solid fences. And another possible different entity they call the Black Mass. Joshua Shelton worked for the 99th Security Support Squadron at Nellis Air Force Base from April 2002 to April 2008. Joshua, welcome to Reality Check. Give me an idea, sir, on what your job entailed. What was your role in nuclear security?
Well, thanks for having me, Ross. To talk about what I used to do, I began certified as a security forces patrolman. So that's your basic, just out in the field, guarding the bunkers and stuff. Then I got my certification for entry control duties to run the entry control. And then eventually I was a central security controller, which basically oversees security operations for the entire installation. I did that for about 2 years. I was involved in 2 NSIs, which is where the DoD sends the Inspector General out to inspect the facility. It's a very high stress position. It's one of the few positions where it's a failure for the entire facility if you mess up.
Now, one of the requirements for anyone that works with nuclear materials is you have to go through this rigorous assessment, which requires you to do what's called the PRP. Can you explain that to me, please?
So the Personnel Reliability Program, the goal is to get people to work with sensitive materials who are most trustworthy, the best qualified. Basically, you have to have a pretty clean record. and you have to report anything that happens. Like, you can't get hypnotized. So we were outside Las Vegas. You can't go to a show and be hypnotized. I remember I had kidney stone actually once, and I feel sorry for the civilian ambulance, but they had to take me to the military hospital. And then when they got there, they got grilled by I think it was OSI. Because they had given me painkillers, and so they were making sure, like, well, what did he talk about? Did he say anything about where he works at and stuff? And I remember seeing them getting grilled as I was getting wheeled into the emergency room, so I felt kind of bad for them.
Because, I mean, essentially, as part of that PRP, you're required to essentially be mentally assessed. You have to be a reliable, stable, psychologically normal human being.
There's no such thing as normal, but my dad and the people I know have had to go through this background check and everything. I mean, you have to have compartmentalizations, keeping your attitude, behavior in check, and everything. And, be able to take stress very well, and be able to just have, the worst things bounce off of you and everything. You can't be a drinker, you can't be taking drugs. At least, with the guys, that I know that are doing this and stuff like that, I don't know so much all the time about now. Some is a little more immediate, some are tough, depends where. They go through even, stuff that's on your computers. They go through your phone records. They go through your family, friends. They go through, that's the FBI or OSI. But you go through a rigorous process. And in order to work at these bases, you're supposed to already have top secret clearance already. So
Yeah, it's a big responsibility. You're talking about the most destructive weapons man has ever created. So they definitely do a thorough job of screening, and then keep tabs on you, make sure that you maintain that PRP status. And if you get sick, you'll lose that PRP status for as long as you're sick, and then you get it back again.
To your knowledge, were nuclear weapons stored at the facility where you were patrolling?
my father actually worked, he was at Homestead Air Force Base in 62, the 60s when JFK was in office, during the Cuban Missile Crisis. He had access to the nukes and stuff like that, so that's how my father got access to it. Stuff secret programs and stuff like that. My dad was almost a mathematician. He could if he wanted to.
Yes, absolutely. We numerous times we had to stand down on live nukes as they were being maintenance, served, or just moved in and out of the facility.
What's it like being up close to something like a thermonuclear bomb? I mean, I can't imagine anything more frightening, frankly, the idea of being next to something that can literally bring an end to civilization.
It's awe-inspiring at first, and then eventually it becomes just part of the job. I'm reminded of that scene in Dr. Strangelove where he rides the bomb down after he gets dropped from the bomber.
That was a great movie, Dr. Strangelove, like I said before. That's a great classic. Very good movie. Love the actors. He plays 3 or 4 different people. Awesome movie. Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Love the Atom Bomb. Great movie.
I can't say if I replicated that or not, but yeah, it's an interesting experience, that's for sure.
But basically, your role, you were essentially in the military, but your role was to provide security and, if necessary, use lethal force to protect those nuclear weapons from any incursions.
Correct, and we were very clear about that. The entire perimeter was ringed with signs saying lethal force is authorized past this point. And should anyone actually break in, we were more concerned with neutralizing a potential threat than sort of interrogating, like, what is the threat or not. Like, we don't play around when it comes to nuclear weapons.
Now, crucially,
They don't tolerate Karens. They don't. These Karens and stuff like that, these rioters, they don't tolerate that. They'll shoot you dead, and they don't care. And sometimes it won't even get reported if you do get shot dead. If you did something stupid, and they'll still have some federal level of these cases or whatever, might not even get to the news. I know, because like I said in the last cast, that I've been at some of these access points where they got guns and you do something stupid and you got photography or something like that. You can be arrested, you can be shot, dead. They don't fuck around. They don't. It's not like how, these Karens and these people go out in different cities and protest and do all that stuff. Do that to them, you get shot dead. They have to lethal force.
there's no way that somebody could inadvertently stray. You wouldn't get a hiker or a tourist inadvertently stumbling across this site. There's absolutely no doubt that there is fencing around. Give me an idea of the level of security around this facility.
So we had a triple layer fence line system, and back in the day, the middle fence used to be electrified, but I guess they didn't do that by the time that I started working there. I would say it is possible for people to stumble into it up to a certain degree because we were kind of hidden from sight by a pair of bluffs and then a mountain on one side. So we did get individuals very occasionally. I remember a group of teenagers that I scared the daylights out of one time when I was on an exterior patrol. But once you get sight of where you're headed, it's extremely obvious what's out there. And most of the locals who would go off-roading or whatever, they would know, and they would know better than to come close. We had exterior patrols specifically to make sure nobody got too close, and then everybody else was on the inside.
So before you were assigned to this facility, had you heard stories during your training? Was there anything said to you when you arrived that there was anomalous activity?
So when I first got to Nellis, waiting to find out where I was going to be assigned, people that go to work main base and then people go to work area 2, they kind of hang out together for a bit. And once I found out I was going to area 2, there was definitely people talking. More the main base people were talking about stories they had heard about area 2. Not many of those stories made it to main base, but there was enough that people knew, like, oh, you're going somewhere strange.
And what did they mean by that?
Everyone had a different story, but there was a sort of there was an awareness that the place was just prone for strange things happening. People would talk about, like you mentioned, the white lady was allegedly a ghost that people would see up there, but there would be other things like lights in the sky, lights near the facility. It was just, it had a reputation for just being a strange place, which, talking to people that worked with nukes after I got out, it seems like that's true for every facility that has nuclear weapons or nuclear materials.
Yeah, it's interesting. My friend Robert Hastings, who wrote this excellent book, UFOs and Nukes, I mean, he's done an assessment, interviews with pretty much anyone who worked at every nuclear site in America, and indeed he's talked to people overseas as well. And he says it's a very, very...
When I first did this, I don't know what the fuck happened with YouTube and stuff. I think it was shitty Streamlabs that fucked it all up. It's like my psychic senses and everything was, I just heard right vibes and I could feel this, I could feel these emotions. And right now, my vibes just are not there, vibrations are not there. Everything like it was the last time I did this, it was great and shitty
very common feature. You'd be hard-pressed to find any nuclear facility, particularly nuclear weapons facilities, where there haven't been, how does one say this politely, anomalous incidents. So take me to October 2002. You're assigned to this facility where there are nuclear weapons stored in bunkers. Your job is to use lethal force if necessary to protect. What did you witness? There was a particular incident that took place pretty soon after you arrived in October 2002.
So, ironically enough, it was actually my very first night. When you first get on flight, you're not certified to be out on patrol yet. They're still finishing up a little bit of your PRP status. So usually you sit at the Security Control Center and then you study for your upcoming certification. So me and two other guys were waiting for, kind of studying, waiting for our PRP status. And sometime later in the night, because I worked night shift, one of the security supervisors came in and said, "Hey, I'm going to give you guys a tour of the facility." So cool. We went outside, loaded up in his Humvee. He took us out, showed us around, and then there was an alarm call for the perimeter. The perimeter split up into MSCs called marker sensor zones, and there was a alarm call to an MSC where we could drive to and get a nice line of sight to. So the security supervisor was like, "Oh, this is perfect. You guys will get to see how we respond to alarms and how you do a walkthrough and all this." So we drove up to the top of this this hill where we could oversee a significant amount of the fence line. And as soon as we got out of the truck, it was obvious that, or the Humvee, it was obvious that something strange was going on the fence. I remember looking over to the fence line, and at the specific MSZ that the alarm had been called on, there was a bright white light that was hovering right over the third fence line, so the innermost fence line. And it appeared from our point of view to be just right over the top, right on the top of the fence. There's a sensor that runs along the top, and it appeared to be right on top of that. I can't really describe any physicalities to it because the light was so bright.
Do you think it was really solid?
I've wrestled with that. I mean, you couldn't see through it, but what was very anomalous about it was that it wasn't really illuminating the desert around it the way that you would expect a light to be doing. It was almost like it was self-contained.
So it was self-illuminating from within.
Yeah, and yet somehow it was able to control the light it was giving out so that it didn't illuminate the desert around it the way you would expect such a bright light to do.
How big was it, Joshua?
So I was pretty far away when I saw it that night, but I mean, I walked that fence line for 6 years, so I grew very intimate with the fence line. Knowing the fence line as intimately as I do and the dimensions of it, I would say it was about the size of like an oversized beach ball, like the type you might take to the beach.
So a relatively small sphere, maybe what, a foot or so across?
I would say larger, maybe about 3 feet across.
Oh, wow. Okay, right.
About 3 feet
and
across.
It was, what you saw was a white color, or was it a different color?
It was, if I remember right, it was a whitish color. That's the color that's kind of stuck in my head, is this whitish color. And what was peculiar about what it did was, as soon as Whiskey 8 seemed to, the responding patrol, as they're driving up along the perimeter, it was almost like it was monitoring our radios, because as soon as Whiskey 8 called it in, it started matching the vehicle speed to maintain an exact distance between itself and the vehicle.
So you're quite confident it's intelligently controlled. It's not a balloon that's bumped up against the fence. This is an object that's being intelligently controlled.
This is part of the balloon going,
Absolutely. It had intent. It was not flying with the wind, and it specifically chose to follow the fence line, almost if it was riding it on rails, until it got to a certain point, and then it made a choice to go in a different direction.
Is there any noise?
From where I would have been, if there was a noise, unless it was really loud, I wouldn't have heard it. I did talk to one of the patrol members afterwards, but we didn't really know each other back then. I didn't get anything from him about a noise or anything.
What did he say he saw?
He said the same thing, that when they were driving up, they suddenly realized that there was this ball of light sitting up on the fence line. And at first they were going to stop and get off on foot and do a normal sweep. But as they were approaching, the ball started moving, so they just followed it on the vehicle. It ended up being... sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, by any measure, that in and of itself is gravely serious in a place where nuclear weapons are stored, isn't it? I mean, what was the response like inside the facility when it became clear that there'd been this unauthorized incursion?
So the initial response was very serious. It wasn't just the responding patrol. The alert fire team was mobilized and ended up chasing along with the patrol. Then we had a support patrol armed with a machine gun who also responded. So it ended up being 3 vehicles for a total of 8 people that were physically chasing this object. They chased it down the fence line for about a mile and a half.
I have to say that, when I first watched this and everything a few days ago, that this became also apparent that this is also a psyop for non-human intelligence and the government, where they're gathering their mental health, they're getting reports that how they react to this non-human intelligence is encrypted, other beings that are there are also testing them. And you see that there's like the government, psychological experimentation, and then the NHI and other beings doing it to us as well, as people go along.
And a half till they got to a place that we call Culvert 10. And this is where I know that it can't have been anything natural or anything like that, because the entire time it was like it was riding the fence line as if on a rail. But here the fence turned and curved to the right, and the object instead took a hard turn to the left and went out into the desert.
Did you get
As
the
far as-
impression, was this a surprise to the people there? Had people seen this kind of object before among the teams that had been working there before you arrived?
So over time, I talked to some of the people involved because, it was my first night, so I didn't know them then. Some people had seen stuff. This was the most blatant thing a lot of people had seen. Some of the old timers had seen other more blatant things, but this wasn't exactly unexpected or too abnormal for the night shift. It seemed like the night shift was the one that would see things like this more often.
Were reports filed? Were you asked to make a statement? Was there any kind of interview that was done with you about what you'd seen? What kind of response happened after the fact?
So for this incident, I was not asked to write a statement or anything. As far as I can remember, because I was so new and I wasn't really part of flight yet, I'm just not fully aware of what really happened as far as leadership. I do know that historically there's a disturbing lack of response to things that happen that you would think would merit a larger response. I'm sure some of the stuff we'll talk about later, my mind was blown that we didn't have, somebody from DOD there trying to figure out what happened and why it happened.
Yeah, it makes you wonder.
As we go along, we're to see a pattern here, where they already know this stuff is happening. This is the reason why they don't do follow-up interviews a lot of the time, and they ignore it. But they're not. They're very aware of it. Department of Defense, the military, Department of Energy, that's involved with some of this. They know what's going on. And it seems like that these guys, in some ways, are like lab rats. It's always being a psych, but it's not, but it seems that way.
I mean, when we hear some of your other stories about what went on there, it does make you wonder if they knew more about these objects than they're letting on. Let's move on. There was another incident where a large disc-shaped craft crashed after silently overflying the storage depot complex. Tell me that story.
So this one, this one's a little disturbing for me because somehow I completely forgot about this incident, and I don't know how I could have forgotten because it was so obvious. It was right over my head. And when we talked, you got in contact with Robert Hastings, who I had originally talked to shortly after I had separated. So I can't explain how I could have forgotten about this, but as soon as you showed me what I had told Mr. Hastings, I remembered the incident. I was on the alert fire team, which was stationed at the alternate security control center, and we were outside. A few of the guys smoked, so we were outside with them, kind of joking, just hanging out. One of the other patrols was there, so it was a total of 6 people outside. And I remember that the guy that I'm facing, we're talking, joking about something, and he kind of looks up above my head, and his eyes just go wide. And as soon as that happens, I kind of turn my head to look over my shoulder. And as I'm turning my head, I see this reddish glow that kind of approaches on the ground. And I crank my head up just in time to spot this. I mean, I hate to say it, but it was a classic flying disc-shaped object. I don't think that it was physically on fire. It was almost like this magma type glow was wrapped around the front of it, and that was what was illuminating the ground underneath it. But it was flying maybe 200 to 300 feet above our heads, very low. And as it approached and came over us, it actually deadened sound wherever it moved. Like the natural sounds of like the building right next to us, the desert, other patrols in the distance, they got very faint, almost like when you stick your head underwater. And as soon
Is
as
there any noise from the object at all? Do you hear anything like a propeller or a jet or a turbine?
Nothing like that. A little bit of a hum, but I don't know if it was the object creating the hum or maybe its interaction with the atmosphere.
Now, let's not beat around the bush here. This is a craft, a solid physical craft of some kind, breaching the airspace over what is probably one of the most sensitive facilities in the United States, if not the world. This is where thermonuclear weapons are stored. Describe what happens.
So the object came right overhead, and you could tell it was losing altitude because it was dipping down lower as it came and passed over us. As soon as it was clear of us, that's when sound returned and you could hear everything normal. We immediately got on the radios. By the time we got the first radio call out, the object had cleared the perimeter fence line, and it seemed to go behind this area that we call the bluffs, which is what kind of blocked us from view from the rest of the desert. And once it went down behind the bluffs, there was a massive flash of like orangish reddish light, and it was so big that all of us kind of braced ourselves because we honestly thought whatever this thing is, it's just crashed, and like it's such a huge explosion, we're gonna get knocked off our feet.
How big was the object?
I'm a little hesitant because at nighttime and you don't have a good reference, I estimate it was 200 to 300 feet above our heads. If that estimate is right, and I'm fairly confident that I'm right about that, I would say it's about 45 to 50 feet across. So it was
Wow.
it was a good size object. It wasn't a drone. It wasn't. It was very large. I've been next to military
Could it
aircraft.
have been an aircraft of some type? Maybe a blimp or is there any kind of known prototype or craft that you can think of that might plausibly explain the shape that you saw?
So it was definitely not a conventional aircraft. It had no wings. It was a perfect disc-shaped object.
Any windows, lights?
We only saw the underside, and the underside was perfectly smooth. There was no... I mean, it did go by pretty fast, but there was no obvious markings, no obvious signs of...
Did it have a metallic sheen to it, or was it of unknown construction. Did did it look constructed?
It definitely looked like it was something that was built, and whatever this reddish glow at the front of it was, it consumed about a quarter of the craft or the object, and it was reflecting off the bottom. So that's why I know that, even though it was dark, that's why I know that it definitely had a sheen to it of some sort. Like, it was able to reflect that light from this glow.
And so you hear this massive explosion. Was there a concussion? Was there a physical force from the blast?
So that's the thing. We didn't hear an explosion. We saw, as soon as it went under the or behind the bluffs, and again, it was definitely on a downward trajectory. We saw the bright flash of that orangish light. There was no sound, and we braced ourselves. There was no sound. There was no concussive force. There was nothing that.
I just have to put this in for these objects in shot on even intelligence craft and stuff like that. A lot of time, even my own experiences, it's like I know some other people don't. Even if I have to be on camera person. Like I said, a lot of people around here are on crack and stuff that I am trying to tell all the time. So I probably should expect too much from them to noticing everything, even though it's right in front of them. But I digress. Some of these objects, a lot of times they're breaking space-time. So when they're not making a noise, that's not surprising to me because they're warping reality around them and us as well. It's like it's an interdimensional type of thing that's going on because they're breaking time and space around us, around them, and stuff like that. So it's actually logical not to always hear it to be able to see it.
You would expect. We kind of felt stupid because we suddenly, like, you do this dumb pose where you duck down. Nothing, no sound, no force, absolutely
So
nothing.
what's the response to something like that? Clearly, something has breached the airspace over an incredibly sensitive facility. You've obviously got to go and investigate.
Yeah, so I know on the central security controller side, one of the first things that he would have done would have been to contact main base, to contact the air traffic control tower. So I know that they would have done that. I don't know the results of that from that night, but as far as us out on patrol, we immediately went mobile. Anytime there's like a significant security incident, but no specific threat, everyone goes mobile. Everyone's in their vehicles, fully kitted up, ready for something to happen. The exterior patrols, Oscar 1 and Oscar 2, they were dispatched out to go to the bluffs because we expected an object to be crashed there. We fully expected to find like hurt people, something. So they immediately went out there to start looking for this object, and they found nothing. There was nothing out there. Now, granted, we were limited in how far we were allowed to go from the perimeter to like maybe 300 to 400 meters. But I just find it incredible to think that there was no wreckage, that there was nothing, no signs of this accident.
Now, one of the things that you guys carry are night vision goggles and thermals. Did anybody use thermals on the site where this object had allegedly impacted with the ground or had been in the area to see whether there was any residual heat?
I don't know if the exterior patrols had the thermals at the time. I'm not 100% sure, but they definitely carried night vision, and they would have used the night vision for sure.
Could it have been a meteor? I mean, could what you have seen have been a straightforward meteor? I mean, you say it flew overhead, it was reddish orange. Is a meteor a possible explanation?
I've thought about that, and the thing is, this object was moving fast, but not that fast. It would have been moving at about the speed of like a Black Hawk. I've been overflown by Black Hawks. I've flown in helicopters. It was moving about the speed of a Black Hawk, and meteors, they move at terminal velocity. They can't control their speed.
And for what it's worth, my friend and colleague Robert Hastings has checked to see if there were any reports of bolide meteors or in that area, indeed in any state adjacent at that time, and there weren't. There were no such objects. So in the fall of 2004, another incident took place. You were patrolling outside a storage depot. Your patrol was called Oscar 1. And you were patrolling the desert, and there were bluffs to the north of the storage area that you used for overwatch because they were high and you could look down from them and keep an eye on the site. What did you see one night?
I'm not a fan of this story. So those bluffs actually is where that object went behind when it went apparently when it went down, when it crashed. I remember that night we had an interior patrol call over the radio and say that they thought there was a truck on the eastern perimeter, kind of up on the mountainside. They thought that they were seeing a truck up there. So we responded. We went up to on top of the bluff so we get a good line of sight to the desert and to the mountainside. And I pulled out my night vision and I saw these two lights. They were right next to each other, moving together. And through the night vision, you could see them. You could see them dip and illuminate the ground and come back up exactly the way truck headlights would do. So we were pretty confident. Okay, this is a truck. Now, we would very occasionally have civil off-roaders that would go off-roading. They would get lost. Some people knew we were out there, and they would try to be looky-loos and see if they could get a peek of something. So it wasn't. It wasn't crazy that there was a truck up there.
And so this area is outside of the actual facility, but it overlooks the facility. Is that right?
Yeah, it's well outside of the actual fenced-off facility. So we keep an eye on it, and there is an invisible line where, okay, if the vehicle gets to this line, that's where we're going to need to move to intercept and turn them around. As these lights get to that sort of invisible line, they suddenly go off. They blink off. And that immediately kind of put me on.
As I said from the last gaslight visit, a lot of ways I feel like I should even do this. Because last one I was really psychically into was something. I could feel his emotions. It's just a lot better from extreme guys. It is. If you're out, you can go around these nuclear silos, these sites. It invites the paranormal. And a lot of these, especially where, Trump wants us to start testing his voice and some of the other military wants to start testing their stupid orangutan monkey toys around. It's going to find UFOs. More craft is going to be falling out of the sky. Because they want to see what we're doing. They want to, as Neanderthals, as monkeys are doing, make asses of ourselves. And a lot of these areas that the government cordons off in all these different areas, different tribal lands that are taken over and seized. They know throughout history that paranormal activity has taken place. Even some of the secret societies that my family belongs to, from the Templar, from Freemasons, stuff like that, family, and all this other stuff. And we don't keep track of that paranormal places. And a lot of us got into military intelligence. You could say that intelligence
on edge, because that told me, okay, these aren't lost off-roaders. This is somebody with intent. This is somebody that knows we're out here and that knows roughly how close they can get before we're going to respond. So unfortunately, the lights were far enough away that with the night vision, I couldn't see a physical truck. It was only because of the night vision and the bobbing of the lights that I was confident it was a truck. So I could never confirm there was a truck there. Once the lights went off, we figured, okay, they're going to go on foot and they're going to try to approach the perimeter. So me and my partner redeployed to about 300 meters away from the fence line in the direction that they would have to come through. A main base canine patrol was up here with us because he was exercising his dog and he heard about the radio call, so he offered to kind of bring the dog and help us out, which was perfect. So myself, my partner, the handler, and then his canine, we all went out about 300 meters from the perimeter. We got down into this dried up riverbed and we waited. The desert is flat here. There's no cover, there's no concealment, and then it curves up to the mountainside. So it's physically impossible for anyone to get past us and get to the perimeter. So we wait, I want to say maybe 5 to 10 minutes before we get a radio call from one of the patrols on the inside. Now, Security 1, our security supervisor, what he had done was he took all the patrols whose AORs were up against that edge of the fence line, and he had them go up on top of their structures at the end of their streets so they could kind of give us a bit of overwatch and kind of help us out and look out and see if they see anything before we do. Those patrols knew where we were roughly because I had shown my PAC-4 laser towards them, and you can see it on the night vision. So they didn't have eyes on us, but they knew roughly where we were situated. So we get a radio call from one of the patrols that's providing overwatch from the interior, and they say, hey, Oscar 1, be advised, you've got a light at your 12 o'clock. And they described this kind of bright light. They couldn't really tell if it was up in the air or on the ground because they just didn't have a good point of view for that. So if it was up in the air, it would have been very low. Definitely wouldn't have been high up in the air. We looked, 12 o'clock right in front of you, we look and we can't see anything. Like I said, flat desert, no cover, no concealment. We've got night vision, a lighter 800 meters away. You're going to see a lighter with that night vision. We see nothing. We look to the dog, whose job is to indicate. The dog's not indicating, so the dog's not getting anything either. So we sit and we wait and we listen. You use your ears more than your eyes when you're in the desert at night. And a few minutes after that, another patrol comes over the radio and says, hey, Oscar 1, be advised, now you've got a light. It was either our 3 or our...
It's the opposite. I use my eyes more in tune with the UFO activity that's going on here and stuff like that. That's just me because I know there's stuff around all the time where I am here. So that is a secondary thing. That's secondary, but I'm always looking way more to the normal people are.
Or 9 o'clock. So either our left or our right. And this was alarming because it feels like we're getting hemmed in now, basically. And we look, can't see anything, can't hear anything. The dog's not indicating. Same situation, no cover, no concealment, impossible for anyone to be hiding, let alone a bright light. I actually called my Security 1, my security supervisor, and I asked him to switch to a clear talk channel because I kind of wanted to know what they were actually seeing. And when we swapped channels, I straight up asked him, I was like, hey, are you guys messing with us? Like, are you guys screwing with us? And he tells me, no, I've got eyes on it. I can see you got a light at your 12. You got a light at your 3. Like, this is real. So within maybe a minute or two of swapping back to the normal radio channel, a third patrol calls over the radio, and they sound pretty alarmed. And they say, hey, you have a light at your, it's either 9 or 3, depending on which one the first one was. And that meant we were almost completely hemmed in by these lights, which felt very threatening to us.
And they're not, at this stage, they're not inside the facility, but they're getting dangerously close to the fence line.
No, they were, whatever these lights were, they were interested in us. They were not interested in the facility because we were about a good 300 meters away from the fence line.
This is where I can feel it, like psychically and stuff like that, where this is where the military knows about what's going on there, Department of Energy, contractors there know about this stuff. They don't know what they're getting into at first, and this is psychological. In a way, but it's not, but it kind of is.
And from the outermost fence line, we were out in the desert.
So finally, what do you see, Joshua?
Nothing. We see nothing. We hear nothing. The dog is not indicating. And within 30 to 40 seconds of that last light being called in, one of
the craziest thing. If there's a UFO, every thing that I've ever heard from animals with encounters with Sasquatches or UFOs, they get scared shitless. Dogs do. They cringe. They want to run away or hide. If it's Sasquatch or UFO and stuff like that. So this is where I'm thinking, missing time distortion and stuff like that.
the original patrols calls over the radio, and they're very alarmed, and they shout. I can remember them shouting, "The lights are rushing you." So when I talk to people afterwards, from their point of view, they all agreed with this. These three lights showed up, one in front, one to the right, one to the left of us. And then as if on cue, all three lights rushed exactly to our position, where we were at. From our point of view, we didn't hear anything. We didn't see anything. The dog never once indicated. It showed no signs of stress or anything. What I have difficulty explaining is what happened right at that moment, because the radio was going constantly. We were getting constant radio chatter. And at this point, I was very experienced. I've been out there for a few years. I have been on-scene commanders for exercises and on-scene and real-world events. I understood that you live and die by your radio when you're in a tactical situation. I can't explain why I didn't notice that we weren't getting transmissions over the radio anymore. Let me explain our point of view first and why this is so anomalous. So from our point of view, we get that call that these lights are rushing our position. I look to my alpha and I tell him, put a round in the chamber, because whatever this is hostile. I tell him, put a round in the chamber, put a grenade in a grenade launcher. This is serious. K9 follows suit. I'm watching 12, my alpha's watching 3, and then K9's watching the 9. We sit for, I want to say, a good 10 minutes in silence, waiting for something to happen, for us to hear anything, and absolutely nothing happens. And after 10 minutes, that's when I finally get the idea that I should contact the patrols on the inside and see what they see. And maybe to civilians it won't make as much sense, but I know to any veteran, this is immediately anomalous, because you, like I said, in a tactical situation, you live and die by that radio. And if you can't see the threat, you're in constant communication with the people that can.
Do you think something was manipulating your mind?
I don't know. I can't speak to that.
Is that your suspicion that the way that you didn't think about using your radio or noticed that the radio wasn't working, that is anomalous, isn't it?
It is. And as much as I don't have any evidence for it other than what I experienced, I have to say that yes, something very much influenced the three of us to not think about. It was almost like, I mean, we didn't even realize that we weren't getting radio transmissions anymore, even though right before that there were constant radio transmissions. So we didn't even realize our radios weren't working. We weren't hearing the radios. And I carried my radio right here next to my ear. It's impossible I wouldn't have heard it. I can't explain why I sat there for 10 minutes as a seasoned on-scene commander already to numerous incidents and did not think once to call the other patrols on the inside.
There's another incident, and this time it involved apparent entities, beings, humanoid-shaped beings. Tell me about that.
To kind of put a finisher on the previous incident, I did want to say that we did find out that we basically had lost about 20 to 30 minutes of time.
Wow. And did it feel like that length of time?
No. And that was basically after we were there for 10 minutes. I tried a radio check when I realized, wait, no, nothing's transmitting. We couldn't get through on the radios, so I made the call. Let's go back to the perimeter and make visual contact with the patrols on the inside, thinking our radios were fried or something.
This goes back to some of the stuff when I was trying to videotape. We did pictures of some UFOs. I was watching and missing time where altitude sort of around me or something like that. They just fizzle out. They just disappear. I don't know. Some of that stuff, I mean, there's different things that could be happening. And sometimes they don't want to be seen on camera either.
When it was almost like we crossed a line, an invisible line. And as soon as you cross this line, all three of our radios started transmitting again. We started hearing people on the inside transmitting.
And were they freaking out that you weren't responding?
Yes, everyone was looking for us. And that's also what I can't explain, because we were in a kind of, from their point of view, our original position was kind of hidden to where they couldn't really see us. They knew where we were at. But once we left that position, it was flat desert. There's just no feasible way that patrols using night vision with high ground wouldn't have seen us walking. And nobody spotted us until we got close to where we had stopped our vehicles at. That's when patrols spotted us, which was about the same time that the radios started working.
I still wonder, it's just caught my attention again. Why does he have a Challenger explosion right there? That's JFK.
That's
I was
really
told
freaky.
by my...
So basically, they couldn't even get visuals on you at a time when you really should have been able to be seen.
It should have been clear as day that we were walking back to the perimeter. They should have seen us long before, especially with night vision. It doesn't make any sense.
Wow. So this presumably was reported through your command hierarchy?
So I was told to immediately in process to speak to Security One, our flight chief. And I wrote a statement about what happened. And he actually, as soon as I walked in, he was like, where are you guys? He was pretty livid. And I was confused because I thought only like 10 minutes had passed. And then he showed me, not only did he show me on the clock, but he showed me on the security blotter that like it had been, if it was either 20 or 30 minutes more than the 10 minutes that I thought had passed. I don't know what happened after that. And this is one of those things that is kind of like, okay, shouldn't this merit some sort of response from higher up? But as far as I'm aware, I don't know. I have nothing.
So they took a statement from you and nothing changed. Nothing happened.
No, and it wasn't like anyone came to get a statement from me. I just wrote a statement for our flight chief, and then he would have submitted it to leadership, and that's it.
Wow. Okay. Now let's go to where things start getting very interesting. Let's talk about the shadow beings.
So There's the main incident that I know you want to discuss, but there was a history of people spotting these shadowy figures. We spotted one early on to when I was first out there. I actually shone a spotlight on it.
It's always has been a threat to cut it out there the last of the times because I would be showing some stuff on here that could scare some people. A lot of people look at some of this stuff, and people who do their own research on this stuff and make up their own minds. I know that we have different entities that live on this planet and live here forever and stuff like that. It's not just humans. But I just want to put that warning out there. So,
As we thought it was our flight chief watching us carry out an exercise. And I shone a spotlight on it to identify him. And when I did, it just disappeared as soon as the light hit him. And I mean, there was 16 of us that saw that happen.
How do you know it was there?
So that specific time, we were carrying out an assault and recapture exercise at the maintenance plants where they would do maintenance on the weapons. And our flight chief usually would go out into the desert and kind of get on a bit of high ground so he could oversee everything and see how we were handling the situation. He called exercise terminate, and then once he did, we basically fell into formation in front of the maintenance plants. And right in front of us is a row of 4 buildings that were used way back in the day. When I was there, they were only used for storage. And one of the buildings on the far right used to be an old chow hall, and there was a ladder that you could take to climb up on top of it. So as we're sitting there waiting, we spot this figure pacing back and forth on the top of the old chow hall. And we
These are they're half like a 44-gallon drum. They're like half of a 44-gallon drum, aren't they? They're what do you describe those buildings? I've forgotten what you call them, but essentially it's a curved building, isn't it?
The maintenance plants, I forget what that design is called. Yeah, the maintenance plants and then the bunkers these were just sort of normal, small buildings.
So they were flat roofed?
Yeah, they were flat roofed.
Okay. And what do you see? Where is this figure standing?
So this figure would have been, from where I was standing, a good 40 meters away, which is relatively close. And it's pacing back and forth on the top of the roof at the front.
And how do you... you see it? Because you told me earlier that you had to shine a light on it. So this is in darkness. How do you know it was there? What did you actually see?
So it was solid black figure, and you could see it very clearly because the entire perimeter is lit up, and when the clouds are low, it throws that light up, and you can see it silhouetted up against that light. It was not hazy. It was very clearly seen. Humanoid. I mean, we assumed it was our flight chief. We were so confident it was our flight chief that we started calling to him.
Clothed?
Can't tell any details like that. I mean, it was pure black, and we couldn't tell any details like that.
Height?
I would have estimated if that was a real person, and because I had carried out so many operations right there in that area, I know it very well. I would have estimated to be about 6 feet.
Right. So it's standard.
I'm very confident in that.
Tall male human height. Did it look like it had the build of a male or a female?
Impossible to tell, but I mean, we assumed it was our flight chief. Like there was no, because it kind of looked like him a bit, like he was a bit lankier. There was nothing, like we didn't see it and thought it was anything strange.
So you shone a light on it and it disappeared. How many people saw that shadowy object?
It was 16 of us. 16 of us, because we were all sitting there and we were calling to the figure, thinking it was our flight chief. And then when it wasn't responding, I took a spotlight from one of the other members, and then I turned it on, and as I cranked it up to the building, as soon as the light hit the legs, that's when it just disappeared.
And when you say it disappeared, it literally, physically disappeared.
Mm-hmm. It was there one moment, gone the next.
Did you go and have a look at the top of the building to see if there was any heat source or any marks on the top of the building?
So we went and looked. Nothing. I mean, yeah, not. There's a bit of gravel on top of that roof. And there was no indication that like somebody had been up there recently or anything.
Could it have been, I don't know, some kind of illusion? Could it have been a bird that for some reason looked like the shape of a human?
So no, it couldn't have been something natural that was projecting the shape of a human because it was too clear. We were all extremely convinced initially that this was our flight chief, a physical person. It couldn't have been a trick of the light, nothing like that. It was way too solid a figure, and there was nothing reflective around there or anything.
So That was the first of the shadow beings incidents that you experienced. Did you make a report of that incident?
No, because it was too common. That specific, because it was so low stakes, we didn't feel there was a security threat or anything.
That's what happened in my play. It was hijacked by some juveniles liquid ET. But something like this. Let's see. That could be it. I got the right one here. Here's- Let's see. There's something more than that. I don't think they don't have it on here. And they don't look all like they all don't look like that either. I know because I've seen different types. But it's more like it could be a bit like this, like that. You have to be careful when I put it like this. I don't want to get copyrighted. I can do it more with kick and everything. I've actually had stuff happen, like demonic type stuff, where these demonic entities would make sounds and they would say something, try to scare me. And of course it did. It just happened to happen to other people in the house and other stuff. These aren't shows I'm wasting time. These YouTubes, the way, but it's also like that shadow, like that in a way. And sometimes they can look also human as well, like close again. When you look again, or they change, you can see that shape. It's solid black, and it's not fully in human form either. If you ever see it, you'll know what I'm talking about. And of course, some are like this, there are some like this, but they don't have the right attachment to enough of that. Let's see.
But
Everyone
wait a
kind of
second,
laughed it
I
off.
mean, let me devil's advocate for a moment. I mean, it sounds crazy. I mean, there's an illogicality here. There's an irrationality here.
Well,
There
the
is,
thing is, you'll also get that psychic sense of get chills and everything else, pins and needles, and everything too. We all have these senses that tells us that this is something that's not supposed to be, this is not something that is normal, this is the paranormal, not normal, this stuff.
there is clearly an unauthorized humanoid in the facility, inside a facility with thermonuclear weapons who's not part of your security patrol. They should not be there. That, by definition, is a security breach, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Well, this is big. They've been there longer than the government has. That is like, well, tribal people have just as much a right to know these entities. They're just sitting there whether the military likes it or not. And they want to mess around with us. They can do that, but I mean, we have been developing stuff to counter this as well. Secret technology, stuff like that. But that's the reason why the Department of Energy is involved as well.
I guess the reason why the second incident was a major thing was because there was more evidence that this was a living entity.
Well, let's
But
go to
this-
that. Let's go to
Okay.
that then.
So the second incident, this
When was this?
This, if I remember right, would have been about 2006. If I remember right, it was about 2006. So every night we would carry out an exercise. It would vary what the exercise was, but this night we were practicing recapture and assault operations. And we had a dedicated training structure for it, where it was an empty bunker, no weapons or anything in it, but it was just like the real thing. And I was on scene commander for that exercise. And when you were dealing with nuclear weapons, in normal CQB, you want to secure the perimeter of a building, and you want to make sure that your backs are covered and all this. When you're dealing with nuclear weapons, you have to get custody of the weapon immediately. So you don't take the same safety or security measures you would take. So we get to the structure, we set up the assault force. We haven't swept the desert behind us or to the sides of us because, again, you have to get to the weapon. But we have an oversight patrol who's up on high ground, and they're several hundred meters away, and they are overlooking everything. They can see everything, and they can see behind us, and if there's a threat, they can engage it with a machine gun. As our assault force is getting ready to go in, the Overwatch Patrol, Whiskey 11, calls over the radio, and they say, "Hey, be advised, you've got 2 individuals in the desert behind you. They're proned out in the desert behind you."
And is this inside the facility or in the desert outside the fence?
This is inside the facility, and it's in the desert in between streets. So in between
Wow.
streets where the bunkers are at, there's a.
So this is
about
a serious breach of security.
This is as serious as it gets. But we assumed it was part of the exercise. Initially, we assumed it was part of the exercise. So I told the assault force, go in, and then I told the machine gunner on the Humvee that's parked in front of the doors, keep an eye out behind us, be aware, assuming, again, it's an exercise. Within seconds, though, our Security 1, our flight chief, comes with the radio, and he asks for Whiskey 11 to say again, to make their report again. And Whiskey 11, also assuming these are 2 individuals that got put out there, because we would grab other patrols, they'd be bad guys, so that we would have someone to exercise against. So he tells them, "Oh, I've got eyes on 2 individuals. They're prone down in the desert." I forget the distance. It was within like 50 to 75 meters behind us, though. And then Security 1 immediately calls control, and he calls for an exercise terminate. And as soon as he says that, I know, oh, this is real world. Like something's happening.
So you start putting live rounds into your guns at this stage.
So we exercised with live rounds, which I know sounds
Wow.
crazy to some people, but we trained how you fight. So I yanked the assault force out of there, and my first job is I'm going to set up a sweeping element. Security 1 calls a code red response. Code red being a security incident inside of the facility, not on the perimeter, and that's as serious as it gets. Like that's an extremely serious event.
So if you see these people, are you entitled to use lethal force to stop them?
We are entitled to use lethal force. We would attempt first to apprehend them, but I mean, we had enough leeway that if we even felt that they were hostile, we could have used lethal force. But you do want to first attempt to apprehend. But that being said, we were ready to use lethal force, absolutely.
Do you see what these people or beings are?
So we set up the sweeping element, pushed out into the desert, and the way that I organized people was one guy would have naked eyes, the guy next to him would have night vision. That way you got two different modes of seeing. And then we also had the handheld thermals. Our Overwatch patrol that was seeing the whole thing, they could see the individuals in the thermal the entire time because they were giving us information on exactly what they were doing. And
are they recording this? Is there any recording of the images?
No, the thermals we had didn't have recording capabilities, unfortunately.
Right. Sorry for interrupting. Keep on going, please.
No worries. So, as we are moving up, Whiskey 11 that's on Overwatch tells us that they're reacting to us, that they're basically adjusting to how we're approaching to constantly keep concealment between them and ourselves. That definitely tells me that these are people. We assumed they were people. They're intelligent. They don't want to be caught. They don't want to be found. So I've talked to one of the guys that was overwatching on the Humvee that was at the front of the structure, so not the machine gun team. He told me that he was getting intermittent sights of the individuals on the thermals. So he was also seeing individual thermals intermittently, but because his angle wasn't as good as the Overwatch machine gun team, he couldn't keep them constantly inside of the thermals. But from our point of view, when we got to within 15 to 10 meters of the two individuals, Whiskey 11 called over the radio and said, hey, they just disappeared. They just apparently just blinked out. We went to the position where they were at, and you could see on the ground that there was scuff marks from dragging, as if someone had been proned out and moving, crawling. With our handheld thermals, you could see residual body heat on the ground as well that was quickly dissipating.
So how many seconds after they were there did you get there?
Oh, as soon as they told us that they disappeared, I told my guys to rush forward. Because when...
People need to do their own investigations on stuff. I don't think it exists, but they look like berries, different types and stuff like that. And even stuff that people think isn't real, some of it is. Only view the size of it. Some are like sloth type creatures, some are not. And the sloth type creatures, they leave they walk, they leave a trail. Like he's describing, just the way that they move and stuff like that. So
Once you lose sight, you can't take the risk that they're gonna... I would say 3 to 4 seconds.
Did you or any members of your team at any stage see these shadowy, humanoid-shaped beings?
The only visuals was on the thermals. Nobody that I know got eyes on outside of the thermals.
Now, I understand there's an incident where you looked up at one stage and there was a figure standing about 100 meters distant. You've told me about this previously. Is this a separate incident, or is this incident?
No, this is a separate incident.
So tell me that story. So this is one of the incidents where you actually personally saw these so-called shadow beings.
Absolutely. This was I was on an exterior patrol, so we were not inside of the perimeter. We were outside of it, and there was an area where Red Horse, which is like the Air Force construction people, they train at with their heavy equipment, and it was tucked away kind of in a valley in between two mountains. And we were in there. Me and my partner were in there as exterior patrol, and we were just kind of, joking around. We got 12 hours to kill. And as we're sitting there talking with each other, out of the corner of our eye, both of us at the same time spot this figure that is running in between two of the buildings that the Red Horse people use to store equipment. And then I think one was like their bathrooms or something. And it was silhouetted by the moonlight, because it was a full moon that was kind of behind. And so it was silhouetted by the moonlight. It was very easy to see. You couldn't tell any details because it was kind of far away, but it appeared to be very tall. Definitely got the impression that it was very tall, especially because we knew the buildings, and when it approached the building, knowing where the roof was at, you could tell that this was a very tall individual.
How tall?
I would estimate easily over 6 feet, maybe 7 feet. And again, that's knowing the height of this roof very intimately, because I'd been there so many times.
And is it a humanoid shape?
It's a humanoid shape.
Is it running like a human?
It ran like a human, but what was aberrant about it is, so we knew the distance between the buildings, and it was crossing a distance that would have been about 120 feet in maybe 4 seconds.
So it's a pretty fast, powerful being.
Extremely fast, because that is what really got our attention. After we spotted it, we watched it run, and it did it 2 or 3 more times in between the two buildings. And also the buildings weren't perfectly lined up with each other. They were kind of offset. So it's 120 feet, but then also a bit of a diagonal distance. So whatever this thing was, it was crossing that distance extremely quickly. Far quicker than the person should have been able to.
I'm just figuring out how much the speed is for 120 feet in 4 seconds. It's 30 feet per second. Wow, that's incredibly fast.
Wow, yeah. Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, I don't know Usain Bolt's speed, but I bet he'd be hard pressed to match that figure.
I'm pretty sure he would. So, do you pursue the figure?
After we watched this for like a good minute, as it went back and forth, me and my partner looked at each other, and we both had the same kind of look on our faces. And basically, we figured, hey, this is outside our area of responsibility. It's not approaching the perimeter. It's not approaching the facility. It's not our problem. So we kind of moved back. No, absolutely not.
How much of this do you reckon, Joshua, is... I mean, I'm not paying any disrespect to you, but do you think... I mean, a lot of what you're describing here, it feels to me like something's manipulating your mind. Don't worry about this. Just ignore this. I mean, it's kind of weird when you think about it, that your mind responds the way it does. I mean, this is clearly a suspicious figure operating around a military facility. It should twig your suspicions, shouldn't it?
Absolutely. There's definitely times where it does feel tricksterish. Absolutely. Like there was many times where these phenomena felt very tricksterish, but then there was other times where it was so common for something strange to happen that unless it was an actual security threat, you would just kind of shrug it off. Like it was too common.
Was part of the issue as well that in order for you to keep your personnel reliability program, your PRP, for working with nuclear weapons. Was there a reservation or a stigma about reporting these incidents because people might think you're crazy?
So within flight, we were pretty comfortable talking to each other. Again, because almost everyone had seen strange things. But definitely talking to anyone outside of flight, that's when you started thinking about like, okay, well, I don't want to screw up my career, or like, I don't want to lose my clearance. Like, there was definitely a stigma about discussing things. You'd maybe talk to like when the colonel would come down, or the wing commander would come down, you would maybe only talk about like a major security incident. You wouldn't tell them that you saw a figure moving at 30 feet a second, running back and forth between two buildings. You just wouldn't share that.
And yet, let's be honest about it, they should know, shouldn't they? I mean, this is one of, or close or adjacent to, one of the most sensitive nuclear weapons storage facilities in the United States.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. I think this culture of fear and ridicule is a major disservice to our security personnel, because if I'm an adversary, I want to mimic the strange phenomenon in order to get close, because I know that you're probably not going to report it. You're probably not going to investigate it. So it's a major security blind spot, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Was there any time when you did pursue a shadow being that you saw?
Yes. And this was earlier to when I was out there, so it shows that I was not trained yet to kind of ignore things that weren't a major threat. So I was on exterior patrol again, and we were rendezvoused with the other exterior patrol on top of the bluffs where things like this seem to happen. And as we're sitting there talking, I look up past the guys. And it looks like a person, and I honestly thought it was a person, but kind of backlit. So as soon as I see the person, I issue a challenge, and then the figure runs, and it runs straight away from us. So I start running, and then the three guys with me, they start running.
Are you hearing any noise of the figure running?
No, but I think I would have been too excited and too, like, adrenaline pumping too much to pay attention to something like that. What is definitely strange was that you couldn't run at your full speed out there because of the rocks and the terrain. You would snap an ankle if you tried to run at full speed. But this individual was just balls to the wall, just going. I mean, he left us in the dust, and then the direction where the figure went was where the bluffs drop off. And when it got to that point, we lost it. Like, we kind of lost it. And so we assumed it must have hurtled over the edge or like jumped over the edge. and we stood on top of that ledge and looked around with night vision, and we should have been able to see anybody, and there was nobody there. Couldn't see anything.
How many individual experiences did you have where you or members of your security team saw these shadowy humanoid beings?
I either experienced or heard of maybe about a dozen over the 6 years.
Really? So it's quite a frequent occurrence.
It is, and I think that's also why unless it was an obvious threat, or unless we had more evidence that this was something physical, we wouldn't really treat it as seriously as we maybe should have.
Now, the reason why this matters, Joshua, is because what you're describing here, and this is no reflection on you, it's a reflection on the way the system works. There's a pattern, a clear pattern of incursions by something intelligent, some kind of intelligent being, possibly...
He still doesn't understand. We're in their space. We're also in their space as well. So the way that they see it is, we've incurred on their land. Do you not understand that?
Human, possibly not human, that is breaching one of the most secure, important, dangerous facilities in the United States. Now, it's a worry, isn't it, if these incidents aren't being properly investigated or reported? Do you feel from your experience and your time there that these incidents were being properly reported and investigated?
No, I don't think so. The impunity of whatever this phenomenon was to evade detection, to get to wherever it wanted to be, that's alarming in the extreme. As a security professional, I can't imagine dealing with something that you have no control over. You can't stop it.
That's another thing is they don't want to admit that they can't control it. They don't want to keep investigating. They have other departments that does the investigations. They have other branches and stuff like that that goes over these investigations. And so those departments that compartmentalized places, stuff like that, where they go through information of what's going on over there. And if nothing's going to get done, if they already know about it, they're just going to start ignoring some of it and have these, they know what's going on. So,
You can't prevent it. You can't catch it. No, I definitely feel, especially with the more high-profile incidents, that there should have been a bigger response.
What was the general response from your commanders to the fact that something or someone was breaching the security of one of America's most sensitive nuclear installations?
So I distinctly recall one time when our colonel, our unit commander, came in just in a regular morale check, basically. And he came by each patrol to kind of talk and chat a little bit and stuff. And I brought up one of the incidents, and I was talking to him about it. And I distinctly remembered the way that he literally just went, just like that. That was the full response. I don't know. I can't explain that. I don't know why that was the response. But that was the only thing he said.
Okay. That's not the only kind of incident that you've witnessed, though. There's other incidents which are even more disturbing because they involve something getting in or near the bunkers where these nuclear weapons were stored. Can you talk about that?
So, I think kind of one of the more disturbing things that happened. We had a section of the bunkers that we called them Black World bunkers. And they were bunkers that, when they were open, they were the only ones we weren't allowed to pull security on. I believe it was DOE that would bring in their own people to do security on that. And we actually weren't allowed to be anywhere near when those doors opened. But we still had to, in normal day-to-day operations, we still had to go to them and check the locks. When you would start your shift, you would go to every single bunker.
We both feel like I've had dreams. I've actually had dreams of these places, stuff, almost like nightmares of these places. As a kid, and stuff like that. So some of this is familiar to me.
Bunker, you go to the door, you would check the locks, make sure that these big giant padlocks are securely on. You would check the vents, these air vents, to make sure nothing's been put in the vents. Just do a general integrity check of the door. And one night when it was my patrol that was in that area, I went to do my check of these Black World structures, and I checked the lock. Lock was secure. I checked the first air vent, and there are these kind of like these, they had this big heavy handle that you would lift up and it would open it, and then you would just let it go and it would clang really loudly. I checked the first one. I checked
energy. Know that there's something black and dark going on.
the second one. I let the thing go and it clangs really loudly, and then something from inside smashed into that door. And these are 2-ton jacks, I think is what we carried. So these were about 2 or 1-ton doors each, and there were 2 doors, and they're sunk into the ground. And something smashed into that door in response to me letting that second air vent kind of clang close. And it smashed loud enough that I jumped. Like, it scared the daylights out of me.
So you know that there is something inside a secure weapon storage area that even you are not allowed to enter.
Yes, and when I reported it, it was sort of, okay, well, what's the integrity of the doors? And we can't do anything about it because we didn't have access to those structures. And as long as the integrity of the...
What happened to him was a warning. We'll kill you if you try to enter, or if you do enter here. That was a death warning. That was what it was. I see some stuff. I've heard about this stuff before. And everything. And, like, as much as I hate religious stuff and everything, this is something that, most demonic, something most wicked, is stuff like that.
The structure was intact. It wasn't on us to...
But come on,
respond
something's
to.
inside there, isn't it, Joshua? How sure are you that there was something inside that facility?
100%.
Right last minute, I can feel his emotions and everything. I know other people can, but
100% sure that something smashed into those doors from the inside. My partner was in the vehicle about a good 15 meters away, and they heard it because they jumped as well. That's how loud it was when it smashed into these doors.
So whatever was inside that bunker, it's never investigated what was inside.
they already know.
By us, no.
This is crazy. I mean, this raises... I can see why you've gone to the FBI. What was the FBI's response when you started telling them about this? I mean, the Defense Department, the Department of Energy, they're obliged under federal law to protect the nuclear weapons stockpile. To me, the fact that there aren't protocols in place to make sure that that facility was immediately opened...
That shows who's really in charge. Who can really be in charge of these places. So it's kind of funny, it's kind of karma to me as well. But it is scary, but they know about this stuff that's going on. That's why they didn't react aggressively to it, because they already knew about this going on for decades. So, you know, the regime comes in, they're told there's some stuff that goes on, not to worry, or, you know, the DOE, they're doing stuff they're not supposed to be doing here, or else, and this is everything that I said, is that they could have some ways to contain these creatures as well. Well, not very all true, we're all running amok this place, but the reason why they cordon off these places, the military and these defense contractors, paranormal, so that they can restrict them off human contact as much as possible, and for us not to know what's going on.
And inspected to make sure that whatever was inside was caught, apprehended. That's outrageous.
When I spoke to the FBI, they shared the same concern that I did, that I mean, these are glaring security vulnerabilities. The only thing I can think of is that somebody must have known that this would happen and that there was no need for a response because they knew exactly what was there.
Have you ever heard of the skinwalkers? The Ute Indian mythology about skinwalkers in and around Utah?
I have. I did some research for my previous job where I talked to some Native Americans about it, about the phenomenon, yeah.
What do you think? Is it possible that's what you were seeing?
I wouldn't... I don't have a good frame of reference. I would...
A lot of people think that a lot of tribal Americans say it's crazy that Sasquatch or these other entities or maybe the wolf people or whatever. And the thing is that this stuff is very real, whether people like it or not. And they know a lot more than white-eyed or black people or Asians. They know a lot more. Yeah, I got some of that tribal stuff like that, and it's like, you know, this, it gets handed down from generation to generation over, you know, 10,000 years or whatever, and it's common knowledge, and they see stuff, you know, sometimes, so it's nothing new to them.
I would say that having talked to some Native Americans about the skinwalker myth, there's definitely some things that line up, but I don't have enough information to say like, oh, definitely or not.
One of the other things that really concerned me was animal mutilations. Did you ever witness any of these yourself?
Yes. One of them...
Some of them cut with precision and their bodies. And after a bizarre mystery gaining attention on a national level, cows found mutilated, some of them cut with precision and their bodies seemingly untouched with no bloodshed. 6 cases are now being investigated just north of the Houston area in Madison County. As KPRC2's Sabira Rayford reports, investigators are looking into who or what might be responsible.
Investigators say the cow's remains weren't even scavenged by other animals. An expert we spoke to says that's just unusual. The details read like a horror movie script. A 6-year-old longhorn cross cow found mutilated. An apparent clean cut removing the hide around the cow's mouth, only on one side. Its tongue completely removed from the body with no blood spill. Except this is a real-life Madison County Sheriff's Office investigation and a real mystery for this community.
What exactly is going on here?
The Sheriff's Office says while investigating the first death, 5 cows from other locations, pastures, and herds were also found mutilated, expanding the setting of this bizarre story miles down Old San Antonio Road from Madison County near Brazos and Robertson County. So what or who is the villain of this story? We asked a wildlife expert. In your professional opinion, do you think this could be an animal?
Not at all.
Brian Moss owns a couple of ranches in the Madisonville area. He's also the owner of AAAC Wildlife Removal. He mentions these strange clues. The grass wasn't disturbed, there's no blood spill, and no noticeable tracks.
For everything to be undisturbed, the grass around it, no bloodshed, that's not a pack of coyotes. It's not a wild animal that's done that at all.
Another clue, the precision of the cuts.
They're not precision hunters. They're very aggressive, and they want to get the most they can as quickly as they can.
Could it be non-human, say an extraterrestrial being?
Stranger things have happened.
But for now, the ending of this...
If it truly is...
And now to a bizarre mystery.
Is that this may not be long time. You see UFOs around these places. You see Black Hawks or Huey helicopters. And yeah, this is going on a long time. There's this. I guess the graphic stuff, but yeah.
Died naturally, and then I got closer to it and I could see it wasn't natural. The eyes were gone, the tongue was gone, the ears were gone, the sex organs were cut out. It's just kind of weird.
He notified the local sheriff, who came out to take a look. But there was nothing he could do. The case was shelved, but it remains a disturbing mystery.
I guess one of the strangest things is the laser cuts. Why is there no blood? How come body parts aren't strung around?
In 62 years of farming, Tom had never seen anything like this. Predators don't normally leave a carcass intact and drink nearly 11 gallons, 40 liters of blood. And yet, farmers all over the world are reporting similar mutilations. Author and paranormal investigator Chris O'Brien has spent 20 years researching these strange incidents.
Cattle mutilations and
this is happening a lot. But you have ETs have contractors, defense contractors, military working together, stuff like that. Shout out to Discovery. This is transformative and contrary to experiences as well. But like I said, some of this, was transcended for some people I know. Because soldiers we were trying to create super soldiers and create special healing properties, bioengineering from these animals into making quickly healing
I saw photos of a second one, though there were 3 in total.
What did you see?
So this was towards the end of my enlistment. So I believe it was either late 2007 or in 2008 is I believe when it happened. And one of the exterior patrols was out along the perimeter, driving along the perimeter, and they came across the carcass of a donkey that had been put on the side of the road. Now, the animal had eyes and tongue removed. I'm trying to remember the exact details because there was 3 different animals, and I believe the first one had eyes and tongue removed, and then its stomach had been cut open, and the interior was gone, but there was no gore on the ground.
It's a lot worse than people think. There's criminal activity that's going on. It's not just ETs were involved in this and everything. And there's a reason why I say a lot of people are keeping this stuff secret to be executed and stuff like that. They're keeping this stuff in secret. That's nothing to do with national security. There's a lot of laws that are being broken that they're getting away with. People have been killed to keep this stuff a secret as well. A lot of people have lost a lot of their cattle over the decades from this and everything. There's no accountability, and I believe people in government need to pay a price for this, for the human trafficking involved with people's psychic abilities that are being trafficked to bring UFOs down. Intelligence and stuff like that, and everything. So
there was no blood on the ground. There was
completely exsanguinated, no blood, and specific organs removed, with presumably extremely sharp and precise cuts.
There was no tearing. There was no nothing.
This wasn't animal predation.
No, not a chance. And I've hunted. I'm fully aware of how the mess you leave behind when you gut a buck.
Yeah.
Like when you field dress an animal, I'm fully aware of the mess that it leaves behind. There was no, even though the second animal was the one that I saw when I was on exterior patrol, which was a few days afterwards. This one had no signs whatsoever of even scavengers coming to the corpse. This one was the same way. No.
That's pretty bad when predators do not want to eat this carcass. There's something alien going on, something evil, bewitching going on that should not be going on. And when the predators are hungry, and they're very hungry, and they get a sense that this is something wicked that they should not be eating, is poisoned. It says a lot.
Blood, no organs, clean. It was dead.
I just want to put on record that from the work that Bob Hastings has done, it's quite clear that these animal mutilations have happened before at facilities like this. The other thing that Bob's talked about, he named another witness with his permission called Chris Cabrera, who worked at the same depot as you from 1998 to 2002. And there were multiple sightings of shadowy bipedal figures moving around inside the bunker complex that appeared not to be human. And Chris on one occasion describes entering a storage unit. Quote, "I had a feeling of needing to turn and look behind me, and when I did, I saw a black mass deep in the back of the storage unit. It was just there, not moving, but I was able to make out a humanoid shape to it, what looked like a head, shoulders, and a torso extending to the ground. I had to look up at it slightly, but didn't see any other details because there was minimal light coming in from the entrance. The mass remained still and seemed like it was just observing me. My thought was to run towards the entrance, get out, close that door as quickly as possible, which I did." Clearly, there's a long history, Joshua, of these shadowy...
There's with them, that they're
beings in and around this particular nuclear weapons storage facility.
Yeah, and from the details that you just read to me, that sounds very familiar to things I've heard people. One of my sergeants saw almost the exact same thing, actually, in a different building.
And it's interesting because my friend Christopher Sharp, who publishes an excellent publication called The Liberation Times, he published an exclusive where a nuclear technician detailed serious security breaches at a US nuclear base at Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri. And again, it involved alleged shadowy beings. He said he witnessed a black mass in the shape of a person standing about 6 feet tall. He chased it unsuccessfully, and he was worried about losing his PRP accreditation if he reported it. And Bob Hastings also met another guy who served underground at Minot Air Force Base in an underground nuclear missile launch facility. He was taking a sleep when his missile commander suddenly began screaming, thereby abruptly waking. He said he was nearly hysterical. It took him a few minutes to calm the guy down. He told his deputy that while monitoring the launch console, which displayed the status of the 10 nuclear missiles they were responsible for, he looked out of the corner of his eye, saw some movement, and saw a tall, dark figure standing close behind him, basically human in shape, no discernible features such as a face. He thought it was a ghost and began screaming, and immediately the intruder disappeared before his eyes. And just to finish the sequence, George Knapp and Con Kelleher, in their excellent book Hunt for the Skinwalker, they also cite shadow beings. And again, this is at the Skinwalker Ranch, and they talk about how when the NIDS team, the Institute of Discovery Science team, were up on a ridge, they had infrared binoculars and they saw a fuzzy beach ball of light hovering a few feet off the ground. The round opening slowly grew into what looked like a tunnel of light, maybe 8 to 10 feet long, and the guy with binoculars looked in horror as some sort of large entity, humanoid entity, wriggled its way through the tunnel, stepped out onto the ranch, and ran up towards the ridge. The creature was dark, maybe 7 to 8 feet tall, featureless, but humanoid in shape. So, Joshua Shelton, what the hell are they?
You know, I wasn't aware of how frequently these were being seen. I had heard from some people, but I have a hard time thinking that it's coincidence that the exact same thing is happening around nuclear facilities. Sensitive.
Nuclear facilities, this happens to normal people as well. The reason I do this is that I don't think military people are special. They're not. It's just that the military and the stuff that they're doing, the secret stuff, and nuclear missiles, this nuclear areas, draws it. It's a magnetism. It's a magnet. It draws it. And people, me, I could be a magnet. I could be a portal. It could be a portal for the paranormal as well.
sites. I mean, I've heard civilians kind of describe the same thing, but it just seems to be so much more centered around sensitive installations. Yeah, I just have a hard time believing that that's a coincidence or that we're all crazy.
So the FBI is now apprised of your concerns about, how does one say this, apparent shortcomings in the response by the Department of Energy and the Department of Defense to investigating these incidents. Do you think they're taking this seriously?
I know that the team I talked to was definitely taking it very seriously. It's hard to tell what's going to happen, what's going to be the result of this. It feels very much, and that was the feeling I kept getting when I was working there, was these are such high-profile incidents, but yet there's no major response. It's almost like somebody knows and expects and knows that it's not going to be a real threat to the weapons.
But that's, as you say, that's precisely what a potential foreign adversary would exploit. I note, for example, just this week when the drone...
Say that it's forward and stuff like that, not seeing for what it really is. This isn't forward. These are entities of this earth. So fucking stupid. I hate people that, oh my god, I got these trees as a fucking, Russia or whatever. Stop the bullshit. This is the reason why they, want to keep secrets. They say it's about national security. That's all bullshit. Stop that bullshit. Because that's what it is. Okay, these entities have been here for at least as long as we have. So, I don't want to hear this, you say about us doing it to other countries, but this isn't technology. This is something bigger than most people's minds can wrap around this stuff. I've been around this stuff, I know it. So, I mean, this isn't forward, stop that stupid ass thinking.
Drones flap was happening over Scandinavia. Vladimir Putin teased the idea of UFOs, whether real or not. I mean, a foreign adversary would.
Like I said, 2 nights ago, Putin, I think that the military industrial complex was a wet dream come true to the American military complex and the intelligence community when it comes to also UFOs. They had tens of thousands of UFO files that were open to everybody to see. It's above the Berlin Wall. I know because I saw something. But anyways, sorry. Shitty on that. Anyways, is that, when Putin came in, he closed all that UFO stuff up. And the CIA intelligence community loved that. The military loved Putin being back in so he could create more weapons, more boys. It's been trillions of dollars in just stupid weapons and everything. So he was a military industrial complexes that drew to the U.S. It's not that intelligence community is a godsend.
Want you to think that these were just anomalous paranormal phenomena, which weird in and of itself that you'd turn a blind eye to that, but something has clearly breached the security of one of the most dangerous facilities in the world, period, right?
With impunity.
Joshua Shelton, thank you so much for joining Reality Check. I sincerely hope that the grave national security issues